Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cocoa Beach Regional Chamber of Commerce's Young Professional Group Meeting, or YPG. I'm Jennifer Sugarman. I'm the president and CEO of the Cocoa Beach Regional Chamber of Commerce, and very happy that I think we're in our 5th year of having a young professional group. And part of the YPG is having these quarterly presentations by people that are young themselves, including Mr. Brian Baluta, who's here this morning. And Brian works for Economic Development Commission of Florida Space Coast. He's the Director of Communications and Partner Relations for them. And the EDC is an incredible group in our area that not only works business development projects, but also has several campaigns that are very worthwhile paying attention to. And one of those he's going to talk about today. So I'll let him talk a little bit more about himself and his background, but without further ado, Brian Baluta, thanks for coming this morning. We appreciate being here.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for hosting this forum. I think it's important. The partner relations part of my title is a big component of what I do, and you all are certainly partners as members of the chamber and the YPGs. The EDC, as Jen mentioned, focuses primarily on business attraction and retention and expansion, and at the heart of that is workforce or talent. And certainly as we create all these jobs in our local economy, talent is a big part of that. Bear with me for a second here. Sorry, Jen, I'm having a technical difficulty. There we go. So, workforce has been a major focus of the EDC for a long time. And about 10 or 15 years ago, that focus was on what are we going to do with the 20,000 plus very smart people who lost their jobs when the shuttle program retired. The last flight of the shuttle was actually 10 years ago, July, and the retirement of that program left a huge hole in our economy. And EDC, leveraged that big pool of talent to attract companies like Embraer, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and others. And we replaced, all those lost jobs and then some. So around 2016, 2017, the challenge became, how are we going to attract the people or cultivate the talent that we need locally to fill these jobs that we've created and replaced. And on the production side, that effort manifested in the form of the Certified Production Technician Program, which gets people into manufacturing careers. We're very blessed on the Space Coast. Not only are we creating jobs for people with graduate and postgraduate degrees, but there's opportunities for people with perhaps GEDs or high school diplomas. That was our CPT program and our manufacturing image and attraction campaign, where we were trying to change the perception of manufacturing careers. As people tend to think of those as being your grandparents' manufacturing jobs, blue collar, grease on your face. But nowadays, it's more likely to be a super clean, high tech, advanced manufacturing environment. But on the other side, we're creating all these jobs for engineers and healthcare professionals and CPAs and you name it. And the world is just not producing enough of those individuals, those credentials that we need. So the EDC launched a program aimed at talent attraction and retention. So we've got a lot of smart people to begin with here on the Space Coast. We wanted to keep them and keep them happy, and then we wanted to draw people that we need to sustain the industry that we've built here. So in 2016, we started a talent attraction campaign called Live Big Space Coast, and that was based on a survey of young professionals like this group. We looked at best practices from the Society for Human Resources Management locally. We worked with partners like the TDC and our higher education institutions, and more broadly at a regional level, the Florida High Tech Corridor does a career expo, and we want to keep more of those 500,000 college students that live in the Central Florida or go to school in the Central Florida area. So this was a strategic campaign that tried to address some of the issues that we got from these groups. And in 2020, we upgraded that campaign with a new website, livebigspacecoast.com. Encourage everybody to check it out. And at the heart of that site is the career pages of all our major employers, big and small, and it's surrounded by a lot of lifestyle content because people are looking for that work-life balance, and they need to see themselves, working and living and building a life here on the Space Coast. So there's a lot of lifestyle content, videos, blog posts. Got pretty good traction on Instagram now, and you can go there, especially in the case of trailing spouses. If somebody comes to the Space Coast for a new job, this is a good source for the spouse to look for employment themselves. When we launched this in 2020, pre-COVID, we had a paid digital advertising campaign, and we first targeted states in the Southeast and then went as far as California, and got a lot of traction that way. And truth be told, Google and the digital advertisers know everything about you. So there's ways to pretty much assure that we're spending our ad dollars wisely and targeting the talented people who are looking for jobs and potentially relocating to the Space Coast. Why do we focus on lifestyle? A good example is IKEA, right? When they sell you furniture, they don't show you this part, right? They use this image, right? And they want to show you how great your life is going to be when you have this shelf that you buy from IKEA. You're going to be sitting in bed with your significant other playing an acoustic guitar, right? So we want to kind of adapt the same style. We want to help people see their life on the Space Coast. And the paid digital advertising was pretty successful. We obviously want to draw from people around Florida, certainly the Southeast, and then you can see we got pretty good traction in California. This was a modest ad spend, and for us, conversions were not only people clicking and going to the website, but we wanted them to click through to our employers and investors who were posting jobs. That's a pretty good average cost per click that we got on the paid digital, which is usually 2 to 3 times that in this sort of. The other thing that we did as a in-house marketing team, and when you don't have a huge marketing budget, you need to get creative. We first tried to double that budget, and we went to the Enterprise Florida Co-op program, and were able to get approval for some additional funding. But we didn't want to spend that money on a one-off, right? And just spend on digital advertising and that was it. We wanted to develop an asset that we thought had some growth potential and upside. And so that approach we used was kind of taking that lifestyle content marketing strategy to the next level. And content marketing, is something we all see digitally, and you might not even be aware of it. But a good example is the original content marketing was radio and television shows, right? Companies would pay to have content, developed on radio or TV, the original programming, to connect with their target audience, their customers, and get them to spend some time with that message, right? And perhaps associate, a show that they liked with a company that was advertising to them. And in this case, for us, because we're competing with markets like Austin, Texas, the Bay Area, larger metro areas in the Northeast, we wanted to show some personality. The Space Coast is getting a lot of traction. I think in the next 5 years, its reputation is going to be widely known beyond just the Cape. But for a lot of people, even within the state of Florida, they might not know much about Brevard County. And for us, we want to show something that is completely unique compared to some of these other areas. And that's what we're up against. And in terms of trying to cut through that noise, we're all subjected to a lot of digital advertising. You've got to get creative. So one of the first things we did is, as a marketing team, sort of take stock of some of the assets that we had originally. And this piece you see here was a hard copy collateral piece, and this was useful for a lot of our employers, HR groups, realtors and whatnot. But as we were looking at it and seeing if there was something that we could use or build upon, those are the Bergmans, by the way, if anybody knows them, but actual young professionals on the Space Coast. I jokingly said to my colleague, "Oh, what wine do you think pairs with a rocket launch?" And we both kind of paused and like, "Oh, that's kind of an interesting idea, right?" And we don't have any, wineries on the Space Coast, but we do have a lot of breweries. And these craft breweries happen to be started by engineers. And so we've got we got a lot of smart people on the Space Coast. Some of them are working on, rockets to send the first woman to the moon. And some of these engineers are also working on really outstanding craft beers that you can drink while watching the first woman go to the moon. So we decided if we were going to do this content marketing angle, and if it could get some traction, not only on, social media, but, perhaps earned media with pitching it to reporters, the best angle for us was this engineering angle, even though we think this campaign could work for, like I said, healthcare professionals, CPAs, any sort of talented individual that we could use here on the Space Coast. So everybody remembers, these engineers from back in the day, vintage Space Coast history, but more likely than not, they're going to look like this nowadays, right? Those are the guys at Intracoastal, which is one of my favorite breweries. So, Kyle Smith was a engineer at Sea Ray and Harris, and now he's brewing beer. Their brewmaster there has an engineering degree from Virginia Tech. Steve Shannon and Sean Lynch at Bug Nutty were both engineers that came here to work for the space program. Steve Shannon actually had a huge impact with the Boeing X-37B program, which is that super secret space plane. And now he's working at Bug Nutty Brewery, brewing some good stuff. Brewmaster at Playa Linda was a computer engineer and laser optics researcher. And Zach Featherstone at Beachfly is a biomedical engineer. So you've got some really brilliant people doing some fun creative stuff, right? Which is going to happen anytime you have an environment like this that's doing well economically and has people working in different careers and different options. So the elevator pitch that we kind of came up with was where else can you watch a rocket go to space while drinking a beer brewed by a rocket scientist, right? And in terms of the target audience that we were trying to reach, we jokingly said as we were developing this, that the Venn diagram of engineers, space geeks, and craft beer geeks was one big circle, right? So we thought we had a pretty good chance of getting traction with these folks. And the result was what we called the Launches and Loggers Live Big Guide to Spacecraft Beer Pairings. And we didn't get all the breweries, but we put together a good mix. And the idea was to pair them with spacecraft, rockets, our aerospace industry here on the Space Coast. So what's the anatomy of a spacecraft beer pairing? So here's one of them. We've got the Lockheed Martin Orion Artemis spacecraft, which is going to take the astronauts back to the moon. And that's paired with a Playa Linda Red Robinot Ale, which is has got a NASA space exploration theme. You've got the background of why we decided to pair these, and this is what I call the spoonful of sugar to help the economic development medicine go down. Here's some background on did you know that the Orion spacecraft is actually produced, assembled here on Florida's Space Coast, and that was a result of efforts that we took after the space shuttle retired to bring production to the Space Coast, which was a first for our area. We'd always been the place for launch. Now we're the place for launch, plus we build the rockets and the spacecraft and the satellites and all that. And then, of course, at the center of all this, because the whole point of having this entertaining content is we want people to go, oh, I didn't know that. This seems pretty cool. I haven't considered the Space Coast before. Let me check out the jobs. So on every page of this, we've got hard copies, and this is a digital PDF as well. And then we've also got a mobile-friendly, digital-friendly version of it ready to launch pretty soon. But we've got the link to the careers page there. So we consider this content marketing campaign a force multiplier, right? As I said, we didn't want to just spend the money on paid digital. So we want to have some organic social traction, and that's something that we're going to be pushing more this year. The brewers are really excited about it. That's something that as a EDC, we don't have the bandwidth to be focusing on just one thing all the time. So the fact that we can give this asset to the brewers and have them use it and run with it and push it to their expansive networks is helpful. We've already gotten some earned media locally and nationally. Florida Today, Space Coast Daily did a coverage of it. And then we're in some beer and space blogs nationally, and we're going to be pushing that further. For us, it's scalable. So we're now working with the TDC because a lot of talent attraction has overlap with tourism attraction. So we're going to be adding all the breweries and developing a spacecraft beer pairing passport. And this is fun for tourists, locals, people are considering the area. So basically, if you go and visit a certain number of the breweries and you see a couple launches, we're going to have some swag for you, probably a pint glass. And we also want the breweries again and the TDC to potentially develop this into an event that would attract people for space launches and craft beer, and allow us, the EDC, to also use it for HR people and recruiting efforts, right? And again, this is bandwidth that we wouldn't have otherwise. The TDC is also going to be, they love this, right? They love this idea because they can use it on their social media organically, and to do some paid advertising as well, which helps us a great deal because we don't have the budget that they do. We're going to ask people in social, organically, and with the digital advertising as well, to use the hashtag launches and loggers when they're taking images of launches and local beer. We don't think we're the authority on the spacecraft beer pairings, but certainly you can try your own and use that hashtag. And then as our local economy grows, we actually have a distillery here, Oceanside Distillery, which is making some pretty cool spirits. And we jokingly said, but I think this will end up happening, that we'll have kind of a subset called satellites and shots, because one of the biggest growing industries locally is satellite manufacturing. So we've got OneWeb at the Cape, and we've got some pretty good projects coming down the pipeline now. But you get the idea. This is not a silver bullet for talent attraction. And it's certainly not going to be the place branding and marketing that the EDC is going to be working on long term. But it gives you an idea of how you can be creative in terms of showcasing something that's completely unique about where we live, right? Nowhere else in the world, like I said, can watch a rocket go to space while drinking a beer brewed by a rocket scientist. And I understand that beer is not for everybody, but it's part of the personality of our area. And as Frank Zappa once said, you can't be a real country unless you have a beer, right? So I think that goes for the county as well. But this is an idea that we'd love to hear some feedback on from you all. We've certainly heard from the employers and a lot of the engineers and the target audience locally that they love the idea. And we have, like I said, more plans for it, and are pretty happy with the rollout so far. And one of the reasons I'm happy to be talking about this is that we had this teed up pre-COVID. It was supposed to roll out May of last year. Obviously, the timing wasn't right for that. We've used it sparingly until recently, and then we had our relaunch August 4th. So this is now Launches and Loggers 2, second edition. We've made some updates because a lot's happened in space locally, and you'll be seeing more from this in the near future. That's the presentation. Happy to take any questions or comments at this point, Jen, if you got time for that.
We have plenty of time. Presentation. We had a lot of compliments come through in the chat if you want to go through that. So good job on that. Cool. Anyone have any questions about the campaign itself, or just questions for the EDC in general? Brian's very knowledgeable. We can take those at this time. Just unmute yourself. I made a joke in the chat, Brian, that if you don't drink, you could take a shot of elderberry to keep your immune system strong and still participate in the campaign when the satellites go up. So there's all kinds of ways you can participate with this.
And Jen, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, people can make it their own, and that's what we want, right? And I don't want to dictate, what's the best pairing for a launch or a rocket or whatnot. But I love it. That's perfect. And we want the community to embrace it and make it their own. So yeah, that's definitely a part of that call to action.
Speaking of community and embracing and making it our own, I don't want to hog. If someone else has a question, interrupt me. But I know we're still just kind of scratching the surface of this, but the EDC has been working on a project that you're calling your community of distinction, and some things that maybe the chamber can help in our YPG, especially as we kind of get further along with that. Do you want to just briefly 50,000 foot level talk about what that is or what we're trying to accomplish here to become a community of distinction?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We also call it community of choice. I know that Jen's an EDC alum, and Linda still calls it community of distinction. But the idea is that people have a lot of options, right? Especially if they're part of this target group of people with in-demand skill sets. And so understanding that people and businesses can really work anywhere. That's more true now than ever in the post-COVID world, where your job could be based somewhere else, and you can work remotely, as we all know. So the idea is we want to get a sense of why the people who relocated here or are from here and decided to stay love living and working and playing here. And once we have a good handle on that, we can use it to better brand and market the place, the community that is the Space Coast. So one of the things we're going to be doing, and these were plans that got derailed by COVID, like so many other plans, is talking to groups like the YPG group, and getting a sense of what's your story, what drew you here, why have you stayed? Is this a place where you feel like you can realize your full potential and have a great career and be a part of a community, like being involved in the Cocoa Beach Regional Chamber? And I certainly think that's the case. I'm somebody, I spent my 20s in New York City, my 30s in Washington, D.C. primarily, did a stint out west because of work, and really got to see a lot of the country and think about, where is it that I want to put down my roots, and hopefully, I've got 2 young daughters, and hopefully it's a place that, they want to put down their roots, right? So, the community of choice, program is, we want to have the branding and marketing campaign that's authentic, for the people who live here, and then also resonates with our target audience, because I think a lot of those desires are universal. So stay tuned, Jen. We'll definitely rope you into some focus groups, which I think is going to be the primary way that we kind of get to collect that information, that data. And then there's a very good chance, we love testimonials. So we like to feature real young professionals in our content and our marketing, because that actually resonates with people. So it's better to have a true life success story than me just telling you that the Space Coast is a great place to be. But I honestly think that this, if I was a young engineer, you have the option of going to the Bay Area, where it's you've got a lot of big tech companies there, but you're going to be living in a house with 6 other engineers, and the prospects of owning your own place are going to be slim for a while. And even with the real estate market heating up here, it's still a lot more affordable than California or New York or some other areas that we're competing against. And, everybody in economic development touts lifestyle, but I think that the Space Coast, we've essentially got 5 waterfronts. We've got a handful of downtowns with their own personality. It's not the biggest metro area, but the quality of life here is pretty unbeatable. And that's something that you can still be involved in a world-class undertaking like the Artemis program, and then go surf in the morning, or help make your community a better place. And a lot of metro areas, you don't necessarily have that impact.
That's for sure a good point. Thanks for touching on that. I think it's important. And all of us that have kids that want our kids to be invested on the Space Coast too and come back, I think it's a really worthwhile cause. And the EDC is what brought me here. So they have a track record of attracting I was young at the time, young talent. So that's good.
Yeah, Jen, I think we're young adjacent now.
Yeah, I'm somewhere. I'm moving out of the group. Does anyone else have a question for Brian?
Hey, Brian, it's Rob here.
Hey, Rob.
First off, hats off to your team because this is such a fun campaign. I am totally like the perfect person that you're talking who loves rocket launches and beer, two of my favorite things. But question is, how long are you planning to run this campaign? Is it sort of a few months thing, or is it something that you're going to grow upon? Because one thing that we haven't really publicized from the airport, but could be a fun tie to, is with our terminal project. We're going to have some new restaurants and stuff, and one of the restaurants is going to be all about local beer and feature the breweries that you had up there. And the preliminary name is Local on Tap. So wondering that the time frame of this campaign, because I think it could be really cool to tie in maybe next year.
Hey, Rob, I'll kind of let you into some of my thought process because we're all friends here. I think it's got legs. I think it could be something that, our hope is that it takes on a life of its own beyond the EDC, because we're agnostic. The content is going to live at the Live Big Space Coast website, right? So as long as people are engaging with it and getting there, and we're casting a targeted but wide net that way, we're happy. But what I'd like to see is a, there could be a rotating event. This can be an umbrella for a lot of different activities. The brewers and some of the folks that we're talking to at the EDC have a good skill set in terms of putting on large events. What was pretty cool about our investor update and board meeting that we did on August 4th is we had 4 of the breweries there who were giving out beer complimentary because they love the idea, right? And they want to help out the community. And the brewers are actually pretty big employers in their own right, and they kept people employed during the pandemic, which is no easy feat. But yeah, we could do something at the airport. We'd love for the airport to use this and use these assets, and we'd be happy to assist any way we can. My vision is, we keep expanding it. Like I said, we could add the distillery. We're going to have more satellite manufacturers coming on board. It'd be great one day if it becomes an annual or semi-annual event. And like I said, we could use a component of it for networking and talent attraction, things like that. And then the TDC and the local vendors can use it for tourism attraction. So it really it checks a lot of boxes for us, and we love hearing that from you all.
Awesome. Well, again, hats off to your team. You guys are doing incredible things over there.
I appreciate that, Rob, especially coming from you.
Brian, what's happening is Rob is already working a year ahead of a position I've voluntold him to be a part of next year. So Rob, if you didn't know, is going to be our Convention and Visitor Bureau chair. 2022, and couldn't have a better person, and so exciting everything that's going on with the airport. And so one of our big major events is coming up in March, and we're privately messaging. We see a parallel here of how we could combine with the EDC and really take this campaign and market it with something we're doing. So we'll talk offline about that, but that's what he's
absolutely. And Jen, we view this as kind of being an open source asset for the community, and it's a good way for us to kind of move into what will be a larger place branding and marketing campaign. Because if we do that, right, it's not going to be, the EDC's place brand and marketing campaign. It's going to be the Space Coast. Right. And we want it to be, what I like to say, t-shirt worthy or koozie worthy, right? Where it's just something that we can all latch onto as locals. And, you think of things like Keep Austin Weird, or Chattanooga, Tennessee has done a lot of really cool things where the community has its own font, for instance, and it's just everywhere and everybody can use it. So I think if we can kind of use some of these things and launches and loggers just becomes one piece of our larger value proposition, but it basically gives us kind of something to latch onto, as one of my old bosses would say, some gang colors, if you will, that we can kind of, wear proudly. So I think we've got a lot to be, confident about here, and people not knowing about the Space Coast is going to change really soon. So we might as well brand ourselves before we get branded by somebody else.
Very true. Does anyone else have a question for Brian before we wrap up?
And it can be a general economic development question too. Doesn't have to be about this.
Again, I have one, but it's just because I know your world a little bit, but I want someone else to go if they have a question. Jen show continues. All right, one last question for me. I talked a little bit with Linda about this. The weeks are blurring together. I think I was there this week.
I think you were.
Yeah, I think I was. I asked her the question, but I want to ask you, as someone who's kind of working the day to day as well, with incentives largely going away in our state and just the completely different scope of work that you're now having to go through in economic development. What are some ways or things that we should be thinking about as chamber members and partners, and how we can help the EDC with some of your economic development initiatives or your projects, things that we should be calling our elected officials about to support so that we can better support you and the EDC?
Well, that's a great question, Jen, and I think it's important to realize that when this community was experiencing 12% unemployment 10 years ago, and the median sales price of a single family home was under 90K. Everybody's house was underwater. 60 Minutes was doing profiles talking about the Space Coast coming in for a crash landing, and showing pictures of boarded up storefronts in Titusville. This comeback didn't happen by accident, and it took a lot of local and state targeted performance-based incentive programs. Like we still have the ad valorem tax abatement, which is a portion of a time-limited tax abatement. But a lot of the tools that we used at the state level, like the qualified targeted industry tool, have sunsetted. And we're in a very competitive neighborhood with the Carolinas and Georgia and the Gulf Coast and Texas, places like Colorado, that are more than happy to offer incentives to major employers who are going to invest a lot of money and create a lot of jobs and generate a lot of tax revenue. As I always say, Jen, you can have 100% of nothing, and it doesn't do anybody any good. So there is that misconception that economic development incentives are just a suitcase of cash that you give a company, and there's no conditions, and that's the opposite of the truth. Everything is dependent on a company doing what they say they're going to do, creating a certain number of jobs at a certain wage, with a certain number of dollars that they're investing. So anytime the ABT abatement comes up for vote on the ballot, we encourage the chamber to mobilize and support it. And to the extent that you're interacting with our state representatives and senators, encourage them to bring back things like QTI and to keep the Florida Job Growth Fund and some of the other tools that we have in the toolkit. Because hey, Florida's going to grow. It's a low tax, low reg state. But there are a lot of low tax, low reg states, especially in our region, who are much more aggressive in economic development. And we don't want to take that for granted. And a big part of what we do is not just attraction, but retention. We want to keep the companies that we have. And sometimes if they have a better option, because business is tough, as the chamber members know, people are going to take it. And they may not see a big difference between here we may, but they might not see a big difference between here in Alabama or South Carolina or Texas. So that's an important message to get out there.
Right. And last thing, just because I know we have some new people on this particular meeting, and they might even not even know what ABT stands for or what an incentive is. Can you just touch on that, and then we'll wrap up?
Sure. In terms of economic development,
how you use it, and how there's some negative perceptions, but really what the reality of that is. So
the ad valorem tax, or the AVT, is a portion of property taxes locally. And one of the economic development tools in the toolkit is is it can be costly in the near term for a company to relocate, especially if they're looking to expand. And because there is, significant long-term value in capital investment, having for instance, a manufacturing facility built here, having a lot of jobs created, right? Because, those individuals are going to spend money in the community, and they're going to buy houses, and they're going to pay taxes, and do all that good stuff. Municipalities, counties, states will use targeted incentives where, for instance, you may give a company a 10-year ABT abatement, which means for 10 years they're going to have that portion of their property taxes reduced, and then at the end of the time frame they're going to pay full property taxes. So you will have gotten the company, the investments, the jobs, all that good stuff for a little break on the taxes, and they have to comply with all the metrics I mentioned. Then in the long run, you have a Blue Origin or a Northrop Grumman or any number of the big dynamic employers that we have here. And the important thing to remember, it's Blue Origin may employ close to 600 people at a $118,000 annual wage, which is, when you multiply that, is a huge impact to our community. But they also have dozens of suppliers, which are smaller companies and manufacturers that work with them. So the exponential impact of a project like that is huge. And I'll give you a good example. Brevard County gave an $800,000 grant to Blue Origin, and that turned into a more than $1 billion investment by Jeff Bezos. So if anybody on this call knows how to turn $800,000 into $1 billion that quickly, let's talk afterwards, because I'd like to know.
Me first, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm meeting first. I'll call you in second. Okay, final opportunity. Anyone else have a last minute question for Brian before we wrap up, or comment? Lots of comments for you in the chat, Brian. Okay. Well, thank you for all of your time this morning. It's always great to hear from you. Super engaging and awesome campaign for young professionals. Good work. Please pass along the thanks to your team at the EDC for everything you guys do. And if there's anything the chamber can do for you or our YPG, just let us know. Thanks again.
Yeah, get on the social for Live Big Space Coast. Go to livebigSpaceCoast.com, and then use the hashtag, make it your own.
We'll do it. All right, everybody, have a great Friday. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Jen, as always.